breaking Denver Broncos news. Apparently, the Broncos have been kind of busy fielding trade calls on backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham. Broncos country, welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. My name is Moose. On today's episode, we're going to go over what we're hearing from the latest in the NFL from insiders like Dianna Russini, who was the first one on this story. Driving to work, actually, on I-30, just cruising along, jamming out to some tunes, and then boom, old Dianna comes in and says, hey, the Broncos have been fielding phone calls on our guy, Stiddy. Now, here's what I will tell you, believe it or not. This is actually kind of funny. Stiddy was actually a name in the trade market that I had heard about 3 weeks ago, but it was never anything materializing. Like, it was just kind of like this, hey, what about Jarrett Stidham? There was really no steam around it. And then, naturally, now the momentum has grown on Jarrett Stidham. So it is kind of funny to me that I thought back immediately, and I was like, oh, yeah, that was kind of a name that I was told by one source that was potentially someone to kind of keep an eye on when it came to the trade market early in the offseason. I'll just ask the question, though, really early on. Like, let's just get this out of the way. If you want to keep Jarrett Stidham in Denver, hit that thumbs up icon. And if you don't want him to stay in Denver, also hit that thumbs up icon because it helps out the channel. And then, of course, let me know in the comment section why or why not you want or don't want him with the Broncos next season. All right, so who are some of those interested teams that we could be talking about potentially? Well, believe it or not, I only think there are four. The Jets, the Dolphins, the Cardinals, and the Minnesota Vikings come to mind as teams that would potentially be interested. Of course, the Minnesota Vikings seem to be high on Kyler. The Arizona Cardinals like Malik Willis, same with the Miami Dolphins. So that just leaves one lonely East Coast team, the New York Jets. I think the team that's most likely in on Jarrett Stidham is the Jets, based off of the connections that their GM, Darren Muji, has with the Denver Broncos. And we'll touch on this here in just a moment. But what do we know so far about the Stiddy trade news? Because this seemingly came out of left field. I mean, like I told you, I heard that he was a name thrown around there, but it was nothing of material. It wasn't materialized, if that makes sense. So I wasn't going to make a video on something that was just kind of thrown out there as pure speculation. So we do know that the Jets GM, Muji, was formerly with the Broncos. He was the assistant GM when the Broncos actually got Stiddy. And the Jets probably want to draft a quarterback at some point here in the next two seasons. But we also know it's the Jets, so they always seem to be drafting quarterbacks or trying to trade for quarterbacks or trying to get a new option at quarterback. So it wouldn't make sense that if Stidham would be their bridge option, they would bring him in on a 2-year contract. They would draft a quarterback either this year or next year when the quarterback draft class is a lot higher. And then, boom, Stiddy gets his opportunity to start, and the Jets have a reliable bridge. So let's go back to the AFC Championship game really quick. Look, it wasn't a great game from Stiddy. I'll be the first one to say that. But I also think that you throw him into a game where it's basically a snow globe in the second half. He makes one crucial mistake, the interception. The interception was the fumble was the problem with that game. But the interception was later on in the game. But the fumble by Jarrett Stidham was clearly the biggest and most egregious error in the AFC Championship game. And remember, the margin for errors in those types of games are so small, you can't make mistakes like that. So I'm aware that there's still a sour taste left in some Broncos fans' mouth about the performance that he was able to put on. But here's an important note. The report claims the Broncos have been taking calls on Jarrett Stidham, not actively shopping him. So just keep that in mind. While we can sit here and speculate on which teams are making the calls and which teams would be interested, there is no report that says they are actively looking to trade Jarrett Stidham. It's just, hey, we'll take a phone call, we'll listen to an offer, as all teams should, specifically on a backup quarterback. And here's another important note. He does have 1 year left on a $12 million deal. 2026 cap hit is only $8 million, by the way. So we can reasonably assume that the Broncos would be clearing up some cap space if they decided to move on from Jarrett Stidham. But what would the actual numbers look like in a pre-June 1st trade? Well, it would be nearly $6.5 million in cap savings, according to Over the Cap, and $1.5 million in dead cap. So this actually would make a lot of sense. If you wanted to trade him before free agency started, you would save $6.5 million. That could go a long way into clearing up some cap space in the event that you want to make a big splash signing. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That's a later video for today. Got a massive report from CBS's Jonathan Jones. Different topic for a different episode, but we're going to focus on Stiddy for right now, but that's coming, by the way. So I think that if the Broncos were going to do this, and that's a big if, the time to do it would be from now, Wednesday, to Monday. I mean, a legal tampering period. You want to make sure you have as much cap space available to do what you want in free agency. And that's kind of where I stand on it. Now, I also stand on this hill. A lot of people have already picked up on this, and this is where my mind went to immediately. So I'm glad you're on the same page as me. Is this a play for another massive trade involving another New York Jet? You guys know who I'm talking about. We talked about Kenneth Walker yesterday. We're going to be touching on Breece Hall here in just a little bit. Now, before we do that, though, we've got the very greatest St. Patty's Day merch. If you want a Denver Drinking Team t-shirt, this is the last time to get it. Maybe not today specifically, but St. Patty's Day is 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away. So go to chatsports.com/Denver Green or use the link that I've put in the comments and description of today's video, which takes you directly to the Broncos Breakdown shop. If you want to support the channel, if you want to rock the very best gear, you can get this Denver Drinking Team t-shirt, or we've got a brand new product for you. If you love green beer, if you love green hats, and if you just love the combo of the two of them together, or maybe you want something else like maybe a black hat, that works as well. If you want beer on your hat, you got to use the link that I've put in the comments and description of today's video. Chatsports.com/beers or chatsports.com/Denver Green. Okay, so what do we know about the whole Breece Hall thing, right? There's plenty of speculation now surrounding the recent report from Dianna Russini to what we know about Breece and what's happened recently. Obviously, yesterday, Jets placed the franchise tag on Breece Hall, so he's not going to hit free agency. I want to be very clear about that. He cannot just be signed. The only way now that you could acquire Breece Hall is to trade for him, because the franchise tag locks him in at $14.29 million. That's a lot of money for a one-year deal on a running back. But it is Breece. And I do know the Broncos running back coach, believe it or not, actually recruited Breece to go to Iowa State, which is, funny enough, an incredible coincidence that the Broncos have this many connections to him. But he won't hit free agency and test the open market. So now the only way you can acquire Breece Hall is to trade for him. So that begs the question, is Jarrett Stidham now a part of a larger package to go get Breece Hall? Now we're starting to think outside of the box. That is something that I could get behind. I wouldn't just trade Stidham to the Jets just to trade him. There's got to be legitimate compensation for us to get in return. So what would a hypothetical trade look like? I cooked one up for you. Jarrett Stidham and a 2026 third to the Jets for Breece Hall, and we get a 2026 sixth-round pick. Whoa! Moose, that sounds like a crazy deal to give to the Jets. You mean to tell me we're giving up our backup and a third? Are you out of your mind? Well, no, not really. Let's go back at the 2025 backup quarterback acquisition market. Who are the quarterbacks traded last year that were backup quarterbacks? I'm not talking about starters, I'm talking about backups. Kenny Pickett went for a fifth-round pick. Sam Howell went for a sixth-round pick. Joe Milton went for a fifth-round pick. Dorian Thompson-Robinson went for a fifth-round pick. Fifth, sixth, fifth. Jarrett Stidham is quite literally an exact fifth-round market value right now. That's exactly where his value is going to lie. He is a fifth-round pick. I know that most people overvalue trades when it comes to their team and undervalue when they get to, other players that are potentially coming in or players that, whatever. You get my point. Either way, if you break it down from that specific math, you can now justify the trade in a completely different light. So that exact same trade where where Jarrett Stidham and a third-round pick get sent away to the Jets can now be used and looked at like this. It is essentially giving up a 2026 fifth and a 2026 third for Breece Hall and a sixth. And by the way, if you combo those together, it's kind of like a fourth-round pick. And look, Breece Hall is going to fetch higher value. Higher value. So here's what we look at right here. This is probably the deal that you'd be looking at, or at least the Broncos would be looking at exploring. So that's kind of where I stand on it. My final take on the whole thing is this doesn't feel like the Broncos would consider it as like a plan A, a high priority. But I do believe this is like a plan B. If you were to ask me what my exact thoughts on this would be, it would be plan A is sign Kenneth Walker. Plan B, work out a trade, giving Stidham up to the New York Jets, and so on and so forth. All right. If anything happens, and I know that something just happened during this recording when it came to the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll touch on that here in a little bit with my producer. But we will go live if anything happens. So subscribe to the channel. 57,376 subscribers. We are trying to get up to 57,500 before the start of free agency. So lock us in and hit that subscribe button. Broncos country, I have got you covered on all the latest Denver Broncos news. So make sure that you hit that thumbs up icon, join the channel. Mile high salute. Be cool.